Love that cannot suffer is not worthy of that name. Hello, my friends, and welcome to True Heroes. I apologize. The last couple of days have been kind of hectic, so I was not able to get to the episodes. I do still intend on doing the one on St. Lawrence, so we'll probably end up doing that tomorrow. But for now, we're going to look at the life of St. Clare, who was a noble virgin born in Assisi and lived in the same time as St. Francis of Assisi. So following the example of St. Francis, her fellow citizens, she distributed all her goods in alms to the poor. Already she had learned from St. Francis to hate the world and was secretly resolved to live for God alone. She escaped from her family with one companion to the church of the Portiuncula, where she was met by St. Francis and his brethren. She fled her family because her family did not want her to leave to join the Franciscans. At the altar of Our Lady, St. Francis cut off her hair, clothed her in the habit of the Franciscan, in a piece of sackcloth, and with his cord as a girdle. Thus she became one of their number. Her relations attempted to bring her back to the world, and of course she refused, and St. Francis took her to the church of St. Damien. In a rather miserable little house outside of Assisi, she founded her order, which was the Poor Clares, and joined by her sister, who was only 14 years old at the time, and afterwards by her mother and other noble ladies. They went barefoot, observed perpetual abstinence, constant silence, and perfect poverty. She ruled her monastery for about 42 years with wonderful care and prudence in the fear of God and the full observance of the rule. She, of course, took many penances upon herself. Her bed was the ground, and at times maybe a few twigs, and she used a piece of hard wood for her pillow. Her dress consisted of a single tunic and a mantle of poor material, and she often wore a rough hair shirt next to her skin. So great was her abstinence that for a long time she took absolutely no bodily nourishment for 3 days of the week, and on the remaining days restricted herself to so small a quantity of food that the other religious wondered how she was able to live. Before her health gave way, which is not a surprise that it eventually did give way, it was her custom to keep 2 Lents during the year, fasting entirely on bread and water. Moreover, she devoted herself to watching and prayer, and in these exercises especially she would spend whole days and nights. She suffered from frequent and long illnesses, which is again not a surprise, but when she was unable to leave her bed in order to work, she would make her sisters raise and prop her up in a sitting position so that she could work with her hands and thus not be idle even when she was sick. She had a very great love of poverty, never deviating from it on account of any necessity, and she firmly refused the possessions offered her by Pope Gregory IX for the support of the sisters. The greatness of her sanctity was manifested by many different miracles. She restored the power of speech to one of the sisters of her monastery, to another the power of hearing. She healed one of a fever, one of the dropsy, one of an ulcer, and many others of various maladies. So it seems that her main miracle, her main power was that of healing. She cured of insanity a brother of the Order of Friars Minor. And once when all the oil in the monastery was spent, Clare took a vessel and washed it, and it was found filled with oil again. She multiplied half a loaf so that it sufficed for 50 sisters. At one point, the Saracens were invading and were ravaging the valley of Spoleto, and they advanced on St. Clare's convent, which stood, as I already mentioned, just outside of the city of Assisi. The saint caused the Blessed Sacrament to be placed in a monstrance and placed above the gate of the monastery facing the enemy. And kneeling before it, she prayed, quote, "Deliver not to beasts, O Lord, the souls of those who confess to thee, but preserve thy handmaids, whom thou hast redeemed with thy precious blood." Unquote. A voice from the host replied, quote, "My protection will never fail you." Unquote. Some of the Saracens took to flight at the sight of the monstrance. Others who had already started to scale the walls were struck blind and fell down. A sudden panic seized the entire infidel host, which took to flight, and the saint's convent was spared. During her illness of 28 years, the Holy Eucharist was her only support, and spinning linen for the altar the one work of her hands. At length, when the Virgin Clare came to die, she was visited by a white-robed multitude of blessed virgins. Having received the Holy Eucharist and a plenary indulgence from Innocent IV, she gave up her soul to God on the day before the Ides of August in 1253, as the Passion was being read, and Our Lady and the angels conducted her to glory. After her death, she became celebrated by numbers of miracles, and Alexander IV enrolled her among the holy virgins. So from the life of St. Clare, let us really separate ourselves from our possessions. You have toys, I'm sure. You have things that you like. Consider the idea of sharing those with your siblings. Consider the idea of just not using those things at all, or doing other things and leaving those things that you like to others. We have to have this detachment from the things of the world, the things that give us joy, so that we may be better united to Christ. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I would like to try to do that episode on St. Lawrence. So I will do that for you tomorrow, assuming that nothing crazy happens here. Until then, God bless you all, my friends. St. Clare, pray for us.